Okay, Warren, so thanks for helping me out today. We've scheduled this session to run for approximately 60 minutes, but before we start, I'll explain the setup and explain how the session works. So today, I'm responsible for conducting some research for the Ryanair and KLM websites. We're trying to identify issues that could be fixed to make the websites easier to use. And to do that, we're talking to people like you, and based on your feedback, we're hoping to pinpoint areas for improvement.
Okay.
So I'll just explain the setup of the room. So I'll be asking you questions and then talking you through the tests. We have a camera and a microphone to record, and that will just help us look at what you do and say to take notes later. Is it okay if we record you today?
Yep, that's okay.
So the session is divided into two parts. First, we'll ask you some questions and about your experience booking flights in general, and then we'll ask you to perform a few tasks on the websites.
Okay.
So there are a few things to keep in mind that will help the test run a lot smoother. So first of all, the session is called UsabilityTest, but it's important to know that we're not testing you, we're testing the websites. So there are no right or wrong answers. And if there are any issues that you come across, it's not your fault, it's the software's fault.
Okay.
And in fact, the more problems you find, the better we can fix them.
Great.
Secondly, please be as candid as possible. So if you don't like something or you think it's just silly, just say so. It won't hurt our feelings. And we haven't been involved in the design of any of these screens. And then thirdly, as you navigate around the website, whatever is going through your mind, if you could verbalize it. So if you could just start thinking out loud. So if you're about to click on something, say, Lord, I'm about to click here, or I'm about to look at this screen, or I'm doing this because of X, Y, and Z.
Okay.
And this will just help us with our note-taking. And also if you can approach things a bit slower than you usually could. And finally, please feel free to ask any questions you like. It's a great way for us to understand your thoughts, but in order to keep the test as realistic as possible, I may not answer your questions all the time. So do you have any questions before we start?
No, I think I'm okay at the moment.
Okay, so before we start using the websites, I'll just ask you some simple background questions.
All right.
So what's your occupation?
I work for an engineering company
Okay, and where do you live?
in Dublin.
And how do you usually access the internet?
I use my phone, I suppose, mostly, but then also laptops, PCs, and tablets occasionally.
Okay, do you usually use the internet at home or work or?
Both constantly using it.
Okay, and what type of phone do you have?
An Android phone.
Okay, and do you kind of send emails from work off your phone and?
Yep, I use Microsoft Outlook.
Okay, do you usually use apps on your smartphone for a lot of things?
Yeah.
So what sort of apps do you usually use?
Well, for those emailing apps, I use both Gmail and Outlook. There's web browsers, so I usually use Chrome. There's also more apps for navigation, so Google Maps. Listen to a lot of music and podcasts, so podcast apps, players like that. YouTube, and then some special apps. I think I have ones for like Skyscanner, and then I think there's Google Travel or Google Trips as well. But I usually use Skyscanner for things like that.
Okay, and what sort of traveling do you typically do? Is it for business or pleasure or both?
Usually just holidays. It would be not often that. Business flights, don't do business really.
Okay, and how frequently would you fly?
2-3 times a year.
Okay, and is it a different destination every time or?
Usually, yeah.
Okay. And how do you usually book your flights?
You go through a comparison website, so that's either Skyscanner for me or occasionally Google flights as well. We'll compare flights.
Okay, so you usually use a comparison website like Skyscanner or Expedia?
Usually use Skyscanner and then check those rates on the actual website as well. So if it comes up at Ryanair, then go to that website
Okay.
to check the rates again.
Why would you go to Skyscanner first before you went to the airline website?
Just to give a general overview, an estimate of what it should cost or what the general rates are, as opposed to having to go to each individual website and compare them yourself, note them.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of airline websites do you typically use?
Specific ones, Ryanair mostly, Aer Lingus, used Air France. Those are the only ones I can remember at the moment.
Okay. And would you access these websites or these kind of comparison things most on your phone or your laptop or?
Both. Usually it starts off on the phone, you get an ID and you check it immediately. And that's why I'd have the Skyscanner app installed nearly all the time. But then if you actually booking the flights, I usually do it on a computer, but the Ryanair app I'm pretty comfortable with, so I might just book the flight on the phone there and then.
Okay. And why would you usually book it on the laptop versus an app?
Clarity, and you see more information and you know what you're doing and where you're going.
Okay.
I think it's easier.
Okay.
Display more information.
Mm-hmm. And could you describe the last time you booked a flight online? Like, what was the scenario? Where were you traveling to? When did you make the decision? Were you traveling alone?
Myself and a group of friends are going to Paris next year in March, and I booked my flights individually. So I used Skyscanner to check initially, and what came back was using two different airlines, both Ryanair and Air France. And so I think I booked those flights then individually, not through Skyscanner, both on the Ryanair and Air France websites.
And why did you book it again on the website rather than the app?
I could have probably done it on the Ryanair app, but I think I actually did book the Ryanair one on the app, but the Air France one, as I was unfamiliar with it, I did it on a computer.
Okay. And you said you were going with a group, so did you kind of compare flights with your friends?
Yeah, we all came up with this. I looked at the flights, and then that was consulted with others and decided on some times. But all of that happened, outside of the Ryanair website or app or Skyscanner, whatever.
Was it kind of a group chat that you were?
Yeah.
Okay. And what was the most important when booking the flight for your group? Was it the price, or was it the time or the date?
Price was very important, but also time of day and proximity. So the outbound flight to Paris, we didn't really mind flying into an airport a little further away than from Paris, but then on the flight back, we didn't want to have to travel for a considerable distance to the airport in France and then fly back. So that was a consideration with the actual proximity of the airport to our destination.
Yep. And when you say time as well, what does
time of day? Time of day. So we wanted to be home relatively early.
Okay. And when you flew out, did you want a morning flight?
The constraints are on the way out, it's on a Friday, so people were working, so we wanted a late flight.
Okay. And how long did the overall process take when you were looking up flights and trying to decide to book? Was it hours or a couple of days going back and forth?
It was a couple of days going back and forth, but I was mostly due to consulting with my friends. The actually looking at the flights probably took an hour.
Okay. And again, when you were sharing flight options, were you using group messages, and how were you kind of doing that? Was everyone using a comparison website?
Yeah. So I was using Skyscanner. I know one of my friends was definitely using Google Flights. I presume my other friends were using something similar. I think everyone uses comparison websites.
And what specific information did you share and discuss? Like times, price?
Time. Initially, the price and time of the flight was very important, and then as we saw there was a lot of availability, we then were able to also factor in the proximity of the airport.
Okay. And how did you share this information? Was it screenshots, emails, phone calls?
Screenshots through chat, and then also phone calls.